Okay.
Okay, so good afternoon. This is my midterm project for my adult development class. This is Mr. Griffin. He is a professor at Kaiser University, and I've had some classes with him throughout time. So I'm about to interview him about his life and like his process of aging.
You are a brave woman. You have survived classes with Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
That you can put that on your life achievement
That's
list.
right.
Well done. Well done.
Okay, perfect. Going to the first question. So, what is your story?
What is my story? Wow. I think the short version of my story is that God has always been greater than my mistakes, which are really quite long.
Mm-hmm.
And when I graduated from high school, my senior year of high school was very difficult.
Okay.
And while everyone else was making applications to college, I never got that done. I was very depressed, very unhappy. My senior year of high school was extremely traumatic. The consequence was that the only place I could get into college after I graduated from high school on short notice was one of the local colleges. And it turned out that my professor there was probably the leading scholar in the country in the field that I went into, which was ancient New Testament manuscripts.
Right.
And so later, when I decided to work on a doctorate, he was able to write me recommendations to Oxford, University of Chicago, and other places. And so that was really quite remarkable. I never intended to go where I went, but by the grace of God, that mistake worked out beautifully.
Right.
Then, when I was in grad school, when I was working on my doctorate, it took me much longer than I intended. I ran out of money, and so I desperately needed a job. And I knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody in Nicaragua.
Okay.
And so this is how I got hired to teach at what was then Ave Maria, what is now Kaiser University.
Oh, okay.
And when I came down here, I was single, and I certainly never expected to find the woman of my dreams in Nicaragua. And I intended to have the doctorate finished very shortly. That didn't happen. I stayed here longer than I expected. And the result was I met a beautiful woman from Tepe, Nicaragua.
Oh, that's great.
And we have been married now for 12 years. And so, we sometimes talk about how if I'd finished my doctorate when I was supposed to, I'd have never come down to Nicaragua in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had finished the doctorate then after I got here, I would have probably been gone.
Right.
And
so you would think that it's God's plan, basically, how He worked His way
do.
through it, and
I do, and I don't have an explanation for that.
Right.
But yeah, that would be the short version of my story. There are all kinds of other parts.
Right, of course, but
Yeah.
well, do you mind if we go on to the
No,
next question?
no, go ahead.
Okay, so the next question is, what are some of your favorite memories? I love this question.
My favorite memories. Wow, that's hard. Okay, I'm gonna give you some kind of silly sounding things.
Okay.
And some cool things. Favorite memories: winning the Little League championship when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
That is one of my favorite memories. Despite the fact that high school was incredibly traumatic for me, apart from my father, the most important person in my life was my high school debate coach. who was also my high school Greek teacher. And if it hadn't been for him, everything that I do is in one way or another linked to the time that I spent with Dr. Henry Street in high school. So I am very grateful for that. When I was received into the Catholic Church in Oxford, I met some really wonderful people who have been dear friends for a long period of time. And then finally, and I'll keep you here all night if you start me on this, the night I met my wife, and I basically knew that night that I was going to marry her. I was about 90% convinced by the end of the night that I had met the woman that I was going to marry. And I met her a couple of days before the American Thanksgiving, and I flew out of Nicaragua to see my parents, to spend Thanksgiving with my parents and my family, and I told my parents that I met the woman that I was pretty sure I was going to marry.
It's amazing.
And that was how it all turned out.
It's such a beautiful story just to hear, like, how some people just know at the moment, just right away. You just know.
Basically.
That's great.
Basically.
I love that. That's amazing. Okay, so what is the hardest thing you've had to go through? These are very deep questions. So
The hardest thing I have had to go through. Well, that's a tough one. I was a terrible student in high school and as an undergraduate, and many of those habits are still with me. You have caught me right before I have to hand in midterm grades, and my dear wife and my dean will tell you that I go through nervous breakdowns right before I have to hand in midterm and final grades. So that is an ongoing trauma. High school? Does that count?
Yeah, for sure.
My mother died when I was 8, and that was certainly traumatic. But most of the worst things in my life have been self-inflicted.
Okay.
Wounds, and some of my students, they have issues with drugs, they have issues with alcohol, or they have family members who go through that. And on the list of traumas in life, I don't want anybody to lose their mom, but relative to a lot of the traumas that I see around me, I don't think that's the worst thing that can happen to anybody. So maybe that's a start. How about that?
I mean, it's something natural. Like, for example, losing your mom. Like, you will eventually lose her. Of course, we don't want that ever.
Right.
We want them to live forever. But I understand, though, like how hard it must have been.
Yeah.
Okay, going on to the next question. How did you get through that time?
How did I get through that time? Well, I don't know. Children have different reactions to things.
Right.
And I think in some ways it might have been easier for me at the age of 8 than it would have been at the age of 18. I do know that one way I reacted to it was that my father's mother could be very difficult.
Okay.
My father's mother, but after my mother died, I kind of adopted her. and in a way that I hadn't before.
Right. So your
And
grandmother.
my grandmother, and she and I became incredibly close.
Okay.
And that was part of how I reacted to losing my mom. And then, and she died 5 years later, when I was 13, and that was very traumatic for me.
Right.
That was very traumatic for me. So, but as I say, my wife had to leave Nicaragua at the age of 9, because of the violence and the revolution.
Oh yeah.
And so lots of people go through things that are vastly more difficult than anything that I've gone through. I am grateful for the fact that, despite the fact that I'm about to turn 622 this year, I was telling you that Dumbledore and I started Hogwarts back in 1427. Don't believe everything that J.K. Rowling tells you about Hogwarts. She isn't always reliable. Yeah. I've never really had any serious physical pain, and lots of people go through that. And I've been blessed with basically quite good health.
That's great.
So I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
It is a blessing for sure. Like not everyone has the ability to live their life without any pain, because usually there's something, always something comes up.
Yes.
So it's very
That's true of lots of people. Yeah.
Okay, going on to the next question. Who have been the most important people in your life?
Well, I've mentioned to you my high school debate coach, who was also my Greek teacher, my father, and got a picture of him here somewhere. Hang on 1 second. What did this is a little blurry. This is my father at our wedding. My father married my wife and I legally.
Your father?
Yeah.
Oh,
we were married. We were married once legally as a matter of U.S. law, and
Was
then
he
we
a
were
lawyer?
married. Yeah, my father was a judge in the city of Cleveland. And my father is really an amazing guy. And when you grow up with your parents are just your parents.
Right.
Dad is dad, mom is mom. You kind of think that pretty much everybody in the world has a mom and a dad that, well, they may be theirs. And it wasn't until much later that I realized just my father has an incredibly creative, critical, and analytical mind. And when I went off to graduate school, right, I'm there with a bunch of people doing their doctorates and professors. And there isn't a dummy in the bunch, they're all pretty smart people.
Right.
And it wasn't until that I had spent a couple of years in graduate school that I got back, and I'd have these dinner conversations with my dad, and I'd sit there realizing, basically, I don't have any friends from graduate school who are A, as smart as my father, and B, as creative as he is.
Right.
And my dad is really a remarkable guy. So I would put those two people as being kind of the key people.
So your father and your
Well,
Greek teacher.
and then the other two people in my life would be two people who have been both college professors. They were working on doctorates in philosophy when I was there. Two friends of mine who played a key role in my becoming Catholic.
Oh, okay.
They were really important.
That's amazing. It's good that you have throughout your life have met people that have been so good to you and like you have learned so much from them. So I think it's wonderful that every time we get the opportunity to meet someone new and like let them impact our lives, I think it's just great. Like,
Yeah.
it's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. There are some other people I could toss in. The current president of our university was somebody who knew one of my friends when I was in grad school. And the poor guy, he was part of the team that made the terrible mistake of hiring me here at Kaiser University 20 years ago. And they still haven't fixed this mistake, 20 years later, I'm still here. And he has been great. He has been incredibly supportive, and the President Anderson has been special.
It's great. It's amazing that you have that bond with him.
Yeah, he's been great.
That's amazing.
He's been great.
Thank you. So next, have you had a good life and why?
Have I had a good life and why? Wow. God has blessed me in amazing ways, vastly beyond anything that I deserve. My wife is a miracle, and neither of us was young when we got married. And my wife has been worth it's always difficult for me to do. Sorry to embarrass you. No, my wife has been worth every day that I ever paid for her. And I'm deeply grateful for the years that I've had here, the opportunities that I've had in grad school, and so I feel very blessed.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just put it that way. I feel very blessed.
I love how you like express yourself about your wife. Like you have that love. You can see like that love and appreciation towards her, and I think it's wonderful. I really admire that. Like it's great.
Well, she's amazing. She's amazing. I tease her. I tell her, and I'm not sure Nicaraguans really understand this expression,
Mm-hmm.
but I tell her that she's my trophy wife.
Trophy wife. But
yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, what are some things that you still want to do?
Well, number one, the doctoral dissertation is still unfinished, and that continues to be a major issue, and that is related to the fact that I work with ancient biblical manuscripts,
Mm-hmm.
and there is the amount of work that has not been done on ancient biblical manuscripts vastly exceeds the amount that has been done.
Right.
And I am always trying to encourage my students to give up their business careers to become archaeologists. The papyri that I work with at the University of Oxford, 90% of them are still unpublished.
Okay.
The excavators came back with about 50,000 scraps of papyri, of which about 5,000 only have been published and analyzed. And so it's 90% undone. And so I feel like my work, my mission in life is about 90% unfinished.
Okay.
And so when you asked me a minute ago, do I feel like I've had a good life? Well, the basic answer is yes, enthusiastically. And yet, I look at how much is unfinished,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to. You get me started on the number of things that are unfinished, and you and I will be here for another hour at least. Okay. All right.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. So, if you could give some advice to your younger self, what would it be?
this is really hard because I made a lot of mistakes. I made a huge number of mistakes. And the thing is, I'm not entirely sure in retrospect what I could have or should have done to rectify them, to change them. I started off at a local college, Case Western Reserve University, and then I transferred to another college. And in retrospect, that was a mistake. I think if I could do that over again, I would have stayed at the university where I was with the professor that I was. But there are times when opportunities came up that I wasn't sufficiently swift to take advantage of. So, for example, I was studying for my doctorate in Europe. I could have gone to Rome to meet John Paul II or to see him, which I never did. And I'm sad that I didn't do that in retrospect. I never saw him. There were some key people that I had opportunities to meet and work with in graduate school that I didn't take advantage of, that I'm disappointed that I didn't take advantage of. But I am not sure. I am really not. It's a question I sometimes ask myself. If I could do things over, what would I or should I or could I have done it differently? And I often just don't have an answer to that. And I do feel like where I am right now is where I'm meant to be. And sometimes that's for reasons that I don't fully understand. And the path that I took was a very zigzag path, but there were crucial aspects of that were very important for what happened later. That, when you think of Moses made a mistake in Egypt. As a result, he had to flee Egypt and he had to spend 40 years in the desert. I'm sure he didn't want to spend 40 years in the desert, but that time in the desert was absolutely essential for training him to be the man to lead Israel out of Egypt.
Right. And
my list of mistakes is really, really long. And yet, I do feel like there were reasons for all of that.
Right.
And so that's, that's a very difficult question.
So without those mistakes, you wouldn't have been able to be here, maybe even might have never met your wife.
Yes, correct. If when I was an undergraduate, my plan in life was to get married at the age of 25 and have 7 kids.
Okay.
Instead, I got married much later in life, and my wife and I have not had kids. I do think I had the right goals. I really do. And I worry about a younger generation in which people are not focused on getting married. They're not focused on having kids. And I think that that's something that we've lost. And
it's so true.
And it's eroding, and we need to rebuild that. And I don't think the current tendency, all the kids in my family, my father got married at 25, but all the kids of my generation of the family didn't get married until they were after 30. And and I don't think that was good for any of us.
Mm-hmm.
I've told my wife I'd have married her anytime I saw her. So sometimes I tell the dear Lord, she was actually, when I was in graduate school in England, she was there as well. And I sometimes tell the Lord, you should have put us together back then. That's when we should have gotten married. But yeah,
But eventually it happened. So
it did
it's
eventually
great.
happen. So I have to trust that it will.
Right. Amazing. So we only have 3 questions.
All right.
Oh,
All right.
2 questions.
Now, my wife tells me
Uh-huh.
that I'm a good teacher, but that I talk too much.
Oh no.
So I will try not to completely run off. Completely
No, I mean
run
I
off
think
with
this
you.
is great
Okay.
conversation. Like I
Okay.
think I can learn a lot from you. So it's useful.
Well, you're very kind.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So what advice do you have for young adults?
Oh, okay. Seriously. Three pieces of advice. Number 1, read your Bible.
Okay.
There is wisdom in Scripture that we all need, and read your Bible. Number 2, pray and find a good church. I was fortunate when I was an undergraduate, and I was a Baptist back then,
Oh, yeah.
Catholic, right? But I was part of a wonderful church where I had some really good relationships, and my wife and I were back in Cleveland a few months ago, and so the two of us as Catholics went back, and we spent a couple days hanging out with all my old friends from this church in Cleveland. Just wonderful Christian men and women who have been a blessing to me. And I remember my old Sunday school teacher who was a surgeon and who is still the finest Christian man I've probably ever met, Catholic or whatever. Really special guy. And we need that. We need a community around us. My wife right now really likes the television show Friends.
Friends?
Right? Yeah, right. Which is all about these 6 friends who hang out with each other. And for me, as an undergraduate, we would have these Bible studies in my evangelical church, and we had these deep relationships that have lasted years later. And that's what a good church is more than about just like going to Mass and then walking out the door.
Right.
There should be a community there of men and women who love God, who pray together, who support each other. Because as important as family is, families need support outside the family.
Right.
They need the support of a church. They need the support of a pastor. So many people here at Kaiser have been blessed by Padre Roberto, right? We all need that. And so, yeah. And then, life isn't always predictable, as I say. But think seriously about marriage and children, I think for both me and my wife, being single was really hard. Some people are called to it, but being single was really hard. And being married has been wonderful.
Right.
And the current tendency of so many of my students, they graduate from Kaiser and they don't settle down until after 30.
Right.
And I, the opening verses of Genesis are, God says it's not good for a man to be alone.
Right.
There are a few people who are called to singleness and chastity, and that's beautiful.
Right.
But not most of us.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay,
Those would be my 3 pieces.
That's
of
great advice. Like I think we all need it, especially because of the structure of family nowadays.
Yeah.
It has been changing a lot.
Yeah.
So like the traditional meaning of family is different now,
Right. Yeah, and it's not working. If I can say so, it's not working. The traditional family of a man and a woman being married, there really isn't any alternative to this. And this is part of what is causing a lot of problems and a lot of chaos. And so, yeah, we've seen this unraveling and going downhill. It's been going downhill in my lifetime, and everybody's suffering as a result. And so there was wisdom in the older traditions on this. I saw Elon Musk, of all people, talking on television about, or on Twitter, about how we need to have more kids, right? No, seriously, we are now facing a fertility crisis globally, in which most countries are below replacement rates for, okay, that's a disaster. And that is going to cause a series of economic and social problems. And as I say, I tried to reverse this personally. It didn't work out, but we need to get back and get focused on that.
I agree with that. I think it's necessary. Like, it has been very complicated. I don't know. That's just like personal opinions and stuff. But like, I think there's a lot of truth on the traditional family aspect.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. What is your favorite thing to do nowadays?
My favorite thing to do nowadays? Wow. Well, okay. I'll give you different answers to that.
Okay.
For starters, you're talking to an academic. Okay. Now, I am your classic academic who feels much more comfortable relating to books than to people. So at many levels, I am happiest if you just leave me alone with some of my books and some of my manuscripts, and I'm really, really happy doing that.
Okay.
But also, as a married man, one of the things that we've been doing right now during Lent is we have been watching Mass online in Espanol from Spain. We've been doing this together, and I am really, really happy when my wife and I can do that together, when she and I can pray together. And those are, I'll mention the third thing. My wife has a younger brother who's Down syndrome. And we don't have children, but in effect, he's kind of like a son.
Okay.
When we can have him over for the weekends, that is terrific. And honey.
We'll pause it. One second.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So we're back on.
We're back on.
We're back on. All right. Good.
What was your third activity then?
Well, I was gonna say the third thing is that. My wife's youngest brother is Down syndrome, and that's just different. And that was a shock, of course, for the family when he was born. I cannot put into words what a joy Jose is. And have you met him?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
For the sign up, I think he came from Large.
Yeah. Jose is really special, and when your friends get married and have kids, one of the things that changes is that the only thing they want to talk about is their kids.
Right.
and it's not quite that way with me and Desiree, but Jose is a joy, and so when we can get him for the weekend, that's special.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I have seen him. He's really sweet.
He is really sweet.
Yeah.
He is really sweet. Yeah.
So I'm glad you guys can get to like share those times and like have fun together and spend time together.
Yeah.
So it's just great. Those are fun activities.
It's fun. He sleeps over at the house. He has a routine. His routines are very important.
Right.
Every Saturday night he has to have pizza. So we get him pizza.
Amazing.
And the other thing that he has to have is he has to watch Sábado Gigante, which went off the air, but we have repeats of it on YouTube. And then the other thing is that Jose is the best Catholic in the family. So he wants to pray the rosary with us every night. So he is an anchor of prayer within the family.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's amazing how a person can like bring so much joy and like can help people like get together and be together and stay together.
Yeah.
Okay. So
All right, I think
done.
we're set.
Thank you so
Can
much.
I ask you, would you be so kind as to send a copy of this to my email?
Yes, for sure. I will send it to you.
That would be great.
Okay,
That would be
thank
great.
you, Professor.
You are very welcome. You are very welcome. Okay,
Thank
this
you.
is good.
Bye,
This is
doctor.
good.
Thank you.
All right, see you. Bye-bye.